All right, AG, you're back on mute, baby. We're back on My Block Podcast, Packers Podcast.
Yes, I
We're gonna
am
get this
on
one
mute.
here, man. I'm your host. I'm your co-host, Michael, along with Packers all-time leading rusher, Ahman Green. He's back off mute. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, I gotta remember that you put me on mute when it switches to the intro part of it.
Hey,
so,
don't
yeah.
put this on me. Don't you put this on me.
No,
don't you
I'm
do that
not.
to me, Ricky Bobby.
No.
Don't you put that on my children.
I didn't
do
remember.
it.
I gotta remember that.
That's a StreamYard.com deal. I should have told you. You got me talking about women's basketball again, and I got all fired up, and I forgot. You got me seeing red. It's my fault.
Yep.
We gotta give props to men's and women's basketball tournament right now. You can get all your betting needs fulfilled at betonline.ag. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your college basketball betting this season. Get your analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. You'll find the latest odds, bracket contests, team matchups, and game trends at BetOnline. Updated odds from everything from live games, the conference championships, right through to the Final Four and the championship game. So BetOnline is your college basketball headquarters this season. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your bonus. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. AG, there's some stuff going on in college basketball. Maybe we'll hit it at the end, but let's talk these Packers, man, because we're sitting here. We talked about it from last week. Okay, we are where we are with the Rodgers trade. We're in limbo.
Yep.
There's a bunch of rumors coming out. We could talk about it a little bit, but we talked about what they've done so far. They added a long snapper and a backup safety / special teams player.
That's it.
We haven't improved from a draft perspective. We've lost a couple players. We re-signed Keyshawn Nixon, thank goodness. But what are we actually doing to improve this roster? And I know everyone's saying, well, we don't have that money in free agency. Dude, for everybody out there, please stop hitting me up on Twitter telling me we don't have any money. Because we have enough money to sign second and third tier free agents that are still contributors in this league for 1-year deals, 2-year deals. We saw it with Gardner Johnson signing a 1 year. There's 2 safeties this year, big time safeties.
Exactly.
Signing $8 million 1-year deals. Tight ends signing 1-year deals.
Jalen Ramsey was floating around there before he got
Ramsey,
signed.
yeah, there you go. So
he was affordable.
It's possible. AG, why are we not doing anything?
It's been obviously the history of the Packers not to do a whole lot. Gutekunst is a disciple of Ted Thompson, so maybe he's using his philosophy of just develop within and then grab when we need to. When I mean grab, I mean sign somebody that we really need to. But I'm like, there is a lot of need positions out there for this team's roster, and so not doing anything. And the market right now is getting dry in terms of players that are going to be really quality players that you really want on your roster. So you got to, if they were going to pull a trigger and nail somebody right now, they should have did it like 2 weeks ago, basically, because right now it's going to be it's going to be even lesser tier players that are not as the quality as they should to be a starter. It'll be more backup players than coming in right in on as a starter right away.
No doubt. And the thing that is. So for fans out there, when you're a player, you're shooting out like this. If I don't get signed on day one, like I went through this twice.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't sign on day 1 or 2 or free agency, this is before the tampering period and everything. But so we project that however you want. But if you don't get signed on day 1 or 2, that payment is going down. Literally, you would almost feel it by the hour. You can feel your wallet getting smaller. You know what I'm saying? Because the teams that are going to spend money are spending money. And now they'll let everything settle after a week, and you'll have the second wave of guys. But we're not experiencing anything. I don't even know if they've had visits. Like, we don't really know. But, AG, I'm going to run some names by you because there's positions of need that we've talked about. We don't know when Sean Gary's coming back. We need another rush edge, run game defensive player on the edge. So it could be a backup guy. It could be a pass rush specialist. It could be a situational specialist, right? We don't need a starter. We need a quality backup that can help add depth to that room, have some leadership, veteran leadership on the entire defense as a whole. Listen to these names, bro.
Yeah.
Guess who's out there? Bud Dupree, 30 years old, outside linebacker coming off Tennessee Titans. Wow. Good player, started with the Steelers.
Solid player.
Leonard Floyd, Los Angeles Rams. Not one of my favorite players, but good player. Outside linebacker, 30 years old. Yeah. Frank Clark, defensive end,
wow.
Super Bowl championship.
Two-time Super Bowl champion.
Now, 29 years old. He'll probably re-sign with the Chiefs for less, but take a flyer out. Hey, Frank, you want to come up and check this place out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's my no-brainer. I don't care how old he is. This dude, I'm telling you, this dude scares offensive linemen. Melvin Ingram just spent a year in Miami. He's kind of been
he's a
going 1 year.
problem.
He's been
He's a
going
problem.
1 year deals for the last 2 years. He's 33 years old. He is exactly what you need. He is a guy that if you bring off the bench, he'll be happy to do it at 33. Situational pass rusher. He is an absolute nightmare for right tackles. He's a nightmare for left tackles as well. But you just think about skill set wise, this guy is an absolute nightmare in the rush game. He immediately bolsters your defensive line, your pass rush ability. You can stand him up. You can run 3-man games with him and Rashawn Gary. You can put it, if you want to keep Rashawn on the edge, if you have a specific guy you want him to target, you can still run your 3 defensive ends and nickel because this guy can line up anywhere. It's one of those deals where he might be waiting until go through the offseason programs because he doesn't want to do them. But it's such a no-brainer. I mean, AG, I'll just ask you, do any of those guys look like players that would help bolster the Green Bay Packers?
All of them. I mean, all of them. You know,
I forgot one more.
Okay.
27-year-old Yannick Ngakoue.
Oh, wow.
Ngakoue's out there. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the names on that list that really jumps out to me is Ingram. It's like that guy, when he was everywhere he goes, he makes that defense better. Not just a little bit, better, because what he does is, like you said, he could do so many different things. He's a hand in the ground guy. He could stand up. He could even go cover the flat if you need him to. He'll do it. He has the ability. He has the athletic flexibility, all that in the hips. What we look at to make sure, to know this is a good defensive player, or this is just a good athlete all around, and he wants to help his team wherever he's at do their job defensively. So that's the one guy I've seen ever since he was with the Chargers, and then he was with the Chiefs, and so going around those teams and being around those people, he can then gain experience and then also leadership qualities from being in those different places.
Yeah, no doubt. And the thing here is, it's not going to be that expensive. I mean,
Correct.
we talk about the scope of things, and even if you're like, I just did a thing on defensive ends. Even if you're in love with Will Anderson Jr. is the only surefire guy in this draft. I think for me, Myles Murphy, the kid out of Clemson, is going to be really, really good. But he's everybody except for Will Anderson Jr. Like, there's no Trayvon Walker, which I wasn't as high on as other people, and Aiden Hutchinson, like 1-2 in the draft. Like, those guys aren't here, and so and the Packers aren't in a position to get him. Even if they got the 13th pick, they're just going to move up 2 spots. Like, they're not going to get him, right? So if you're looking at a defensive end high, because edge rusher is a premium position, you're looking at a guy, whether it's Myles Murphy, whether it's a kid from Texas Tech, Tyree Wilson, whether it's of course, everybody likes the kid from Iowa. I'm not, the kid from Iowa is going to be okay, but like, he didn't even start in Iowa, right? Lucas Van Ness. Right. So all those guys are projects, right? I just call him Mini Campman because he looks like Aaron Campman to me. But but they're all projects. They're not guys that are going to come in and have like Aiden Hutchinson type years. So if you want a guy that can fill in the gap, dude, I mean, literally any one of those guys would be good. I mean, Frank Clark's a no-brainer. Yannick's a no-brainer. Melvin Ingram's to me, Melvin Ingram's like, I would love to have him on my football team if I was still playing. So I got more guys for in some other positions. So we look at center, we look at possibly right tackle. Like we need
that's a necessity.
Maybe another other guy. And I'm not saying again, I'm not giving up on Josh Myers, but
no, these are guys who, like you said, be backups.
There's somewhere along the line where you have to. That offensive line needs to change, but at least one position.
Right.
I don't know if it's center. I don't know if it's right. But there's one position needs to change. Something needs to give. Right. They need to improve. So Rodney Hudson, I know he's 33 years old, but you want to bring in a guy to mentor Josh Myers? Pay Rodney Hudson to mentor Josh Myers. Hey,
there you go.
Listen, you want to start 6 games this year? 16 games, depending on how you feel. Like, we don't think you're going to be able to play a full season, but come in, we'll pay you $4 or $5 million. You mentor this kid because Rodney Hudson, in his heyday, he's 33 now. In his heyday, he was the truth. Now he was a hell of a good lineman. Okay, he plays exactly the way you want guys to play: physical, through the whistle. George Fant, right tackle, played for the Jets last year. He's had some injuries. He'll probably go back to New York, but Fant's a guy when he was in Seattle. He's a good athlete. He's a guy that in this system is going to have some success. Gabe Jackson played with Seattle last year. He'll probably re-sign, but if he doesn't, there's another name where you could plug him at right guard, move some guys around. You could probably John Runyon Jr. can play center.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You just start thinking outside the box a little bit.
Yep.
There are some dudes out there that can really help this football team. And then the other one we talk about, AG, is the safety position. And there's a ton of safeties. honestly, Adrian Amos is probably, of the guys remaining, he's probably one of the top 2 guys, but it looks like he's not going to come back. But if you want a guy if you want to just change the narrative a little bit and bring in a dude who's just a thumper, Keanu O'Neal, he started out with Atlanta and now Tampa Bay. He's a free agent. He's like 27 years old. This dude, he's like 235, 240 pounds. He's a monster.
Good gracious.
Yeah, I was having stuff on him when I was doing some stuff with Atlanta. He he can hit, right? There's maybe some coverage limitations, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe
because of his size. Yeah, he's a little heavier.
But you just look at it and go, okay, if we want to play this too, but we want guys to be able to come down, like we have to tackle alley, like be alley tacklers, like we've talked about ad nauseum on this program. There's a guy. I mean, there's guys available, because at 15 right now, what you're staring down the barrel of, who's the difference maker at 15 that you're going to plug and play right now at this. Safety is tough to plug and play at 15, right? Because you're not going to get one of the top 2 guys. Defensive end, we just talked about. Offensive line, offensive line is probably the one place where you can pick up a guy and put him at right tackle and start right now.
Yeah. I mean, you got to have these positions filled in, because you don't want to be asking that question to yourself come the regular season. And so you got to sit now, pull that trigger, find people that's going to, if it's a cultural thing, if you got to talk to them, get them in to talk to them. I'm looking at the guy's a little bit older. Another guy that's an offensive lineman, has a lot of experience, been with good teams, the Rams and Buffalo, Robert Saffold. That's another good guy. I mean, he's older.
I love him. He's just, to me, I think he was 34 years old. So
he's older. I'm saying he's older, but he does bring in a lot of experience. And he's won. Exactly. That experience of being in those organizations. And I know him personally, and he's a hard offseason worker. So he's one of those guys right now. I know we're going to get into it a little bit about training in the offseason, but he's a guy right now, still, he's not on a roster right now, but he will be getting himself ready just when that time comes.
When you're looking at that right now, throw out some tight end names as well, because I'm sitting here thinking they have to be thinking about the Oregon State kid in the first round. They have to be thinking about the Oregon State kid in the first round. Otherwise, I really have no idea who's going to play tight end for this football team.
No, they got I say guys that that are available. You got Cameron
Brate, Jeff Swain.
Jeff Swain, Dan Arnold, Mercedes is still. Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, there's no guys out there where you're like, man, I'm gonna build my
Irv Smith Jr. and he's young.
Yeah, so Irv might be the best guy out there, but I'm not going to build the room around any of those guys. Like, so
correct.
He's going to be that's going to have to be the draft pick, and now you're thinking, we didn't even talk about maybe the most important position in the room. If Aaron Rodgers is gone, who's your backup quarterback?
Right now they're sitting
Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Teddy Bridgewater. Those are 3 names of guys that are out there. For me, I wouldn't bring any of them in. I never know about Teddy Bridgewater, because his career started off so good and he had a horrific injury.
Yeah, the knee injury, and then
he seems like the only guy there.
Last few years,
yeah, but so he seems like the only guy who's got his. I mean, Carson Wentz has some issues about playing that go beyond just talent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Matt Ryan he would be a great coach. He's not. You don't want him. You don't want to have to rely on him to win a game anymore. And so Teddy, you never know, because is it concussions? How's the health, everything? But you always thought he was going to be a real competent player in the league. I know his career hasn't gone how he wanted it to after that injury.
Mm-hmm.
But of those guys, there's not a ton of guys sitting out there where you go, I feel really good about, because for fans out there, AG, like, let's talk about this. You were lucky to have a lot of former players as coaches.
Yes.
I think that makes a huge difference. Okay. I didn't have that. Right. And so you have to look players, you learn more from other players than you ever are going to learn from a coach
all day.
So if you don't have these guys, especially if you're young, you've never quarterback position, like if you're tight end position, center, if you're young and you don't have that guy, dude, it's a really, really hard road to plow from learning the intricacies of your game, unless you got that player coach, which you had.
Yeah. I mean, that player coach brings in the actual experiences, being on the field in the same positions that we're in, basically situations, if you having to pick up a linebacker in the A-gap, what type of footwork you need and what type of hand placement you need to do, catching routes, catching screen balls, running routes against linebackers that are you trying to figure out coverage on the run. Is he man, is he zone, and how you set that up to find it out. sooner than later. And also just having Edgar have those conversations with me. I know I had an older coach too that coached Walter Payton for a year that we had in Green Bay early when I first got there. I just can't think of his name right now, but still him always referring back to when he was coaching Walter and what Walter did and showing that. And that was a guy I idolized too. But hearing those conversations, having those conversations just gives you the insight because it's coming from a reliable source. So that is real hands-on experience. That is truth to what every word is coming out their mouth.
I had this conversation with my kid last weekend about something. We were talking about a different sport, but it's the same idea. The value you have to your team ultimately is going to go as far as you can win your confrontational matchup with your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you can be a good teammate, you can kind of fill a role, but like if you want to be a good player, if you want to have a role no matter what, then your value is only as good as your ability to beat the guy in front of you, right? So you have to beat that linebacker. I got to beat that defensive tackle, whatever it is. And so the more information you can gather that is very specifically intertwined with how to do that, the better off you're going to be. And that's what a player can give you on the, it's like the conversation when you're kneeling down, you got your helmet on the ground on the sideline in training camp. And I'm asking Frank Winters, like, how do you deal with Adam Timmerman? How do you deal with this? Mike Flanagan, what safety are you looking at when they roll coverage? Like that information, you're not necessarily just going to get in the classroom, and the intimacy of it is just a different deal. And that's why having some of these veteran guys in the room is so huge for a young Green Bay Packers team.
Yeah, it is. And because they're a young team that's going to be, as everybody says, resetting that whole team because of the big changeover that's about to happen.
Speaking about that, off-season program is going to start in April.
Yep.
So to take it back, we didn't have off-season programs when you and I started, at least in Green Bay, because maybe it's because they were living. Nobody wanted to live in Green Bay. I'm not really sure, but back then they had
a little something. Bloke was around. You could check in with him.
You could come in, but wasn't. It wasn't like this voluntary mandatory, right? There wasn't OTAs. There was a 3-day mini camp, another 3-day mini camp, an 8-day mini camp, and you were out. That was it. Right. There was no, 2.5 months of OTAs. You're there for 3-4 hours a day. You got to meet with your coaches half the time. It's just like, if you wanted to be there and you wanted to work out, you go work out, talk to Rubes, talk to Bloke, run out the gate, right? Go play basketball if you want to.
Yep.
There's none of this, like go sit in the classroom, go through study the playbook, all this, whatever's going on now. So one thing that happens now, especially in social media, and I do think there's a ton of value to it. So I want to kind of get off the idea that I don't think it's valuable, but high school, college in particular, like that training together, dude, I am 100% about that, right? It forms a bond. Guys are pushing each other really hard. But I think what people don't understand when you get to the pro level, guys aren't pushing themselves that hard. A lot of guys aren't.
Yeah.
And like the difference between, like, if I went back to the Naval Academy and we had to go through Phil Emery's off-season training, and then you did anything that goes in the National Football League, I'm just talking from an intensity standpoint and what you're putting into it. And like the fact they have puke buckets next to the squat racks, like that's the life that you're living in college. Yep. That's not the life you're living here. So a lot of guys, like we talked about last year, KJ Osborne, go down to the House Athlete, and they want to train with guys that are going to train at that intensity level all the time because they know that's how they're going to get a leg up on the competition. Exactly. But all these teams want their players at the facility. So like, how do you navigate that? And it does, as you go into that as a rookie, as a veteran, as a star, as a role player, what do you do?
I say like now, I say now what you do, you got to realize one or two things. If you're a high round draft pick, you got to look at, okay, yeah, I got drafted first, second round, and I played a lot this year, or I was, even though I wasn't a starter, or if I was a starter, you got to look at going into your offseason and say this to yourself, okay, where do I want to be next year? Do I want to be, if I wasn't starting, do I want to be the guy? You got to ask yourself that. And basically the answer should be yes. So then you got to look at what's going to be the best scenario for me to become that person, because I already knew what I, did before the draft, training, for the combine. If it was, most of my years before that was training with my teammates in college, was that it? And then realized that was it, because that got me better. And that's what I remember working out here in the summers in Nebraska, I pretty much try to simulate that where I was doing my combine training out in California, but doing it with multiple people there. And then every offseason, once I got drafted, that's what I was always trying to get back to that feeling of being around a bunch of guys. I came back to Nebraska a few times in the offseason. And then once I got to Green Bay, I just was doing it on my own, but I was trying to push myself, but it's still that one element missing, not having guys around me all the time, that I knew that were like pushing ourselves to that higher level, basically.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's really hard
because there's a lot of pressure, and like the narrative. I mean, listen, the narrative makes sense from the team perspective. They're like, hey man, like we pay your salary. We want, you're a member of this team.
Mm-hmm.
This is, so you can go into like, oh, it's about team buying. It's about team. And I'm here to say like, it's really not, because if it's about that, then, like for example, I think Jordan Love is sending, or all these guys are going to go work out with Jordan Love in California. I find there's a much more, that's much more valuable than them going and having to work out under the guise of the coaching staff and being they're away from the facility. They're in their own element. They can be themselves. They can talk things through. They can have some nuances ironed out, right? Without any interaction with anybody else. I think that is super valuable. They're committed to it. I love that, right? That's what we used to do. There was a handful of us in Vegas, different teams. We would be working out, training with each other, training against each other, doing one-on-one reps, all off season. And like, I've never gotten more out of off seasons than when I went away, learned something new from somebody else, worked extremely hard, had a good training partner, but also had these other guys coming in and out, young people, fresh blood, people working hard, that environment, college environment, going after it. You can get so much out of that because, again, we always talk about like what is the human capacity? What is our ceiling?
Yeah.
And to your point, what you really have to ask yourself is, am I giving myself the opportunity to be the best version of me,
to get better?
Right. Yep. This is a hard statement. And a lot of GMs would be pissed at me for saying this, but if that answer is not at the facility, then you got to go find out where it is.
Exactly.
And there's a handful of places that might be that way, but for the places that aren't, man, if it's not there, because if you're not good enough, they're going to find a new you.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you got to make sure that you're the best version of you, and you can deal with all the other stuff, however you have to, but you got to show up in training camp, not in off season. You don't win a job in the off season. No. You got to show up in training camp with the best version of yourself.
Yeah, you got to be ready to go, hitting on all cylinders.
I remember I went to a bunch of every offseason I'd go to a different place for a week at least, right? And I'd try something new.
Right.
And I remember, dude, I just was my
what did you do?
Well, my first year in Carolina, after the first year, like Trina's pregnant. And we bring in this kid, Evan Mathis. He's from Alabama.
Yeah.
And Evan turned out to be an all-pro, but he had like a career that kind of he was like a journeyman for like 6 years, and then he got into the right coach. He found the right team and the right coach.
Correct.
That embraced what he was, and he was 2-time all-pro. Like he was an amazing career, right?
Yeah.
But he came in and like this dude was he was the most freakish athlete I've ever seen. And this is when I was like as strong as I've ever been, right?
Right.
And so we're lifting.
I think I met him too. I think I met him once.
We start lifting together and everything, and he swears by this dude, Chad Ike, out in Arizona.
Right.
So I'm like, after this year, and like I'm all pro that year. The year's good for me, right? Yeah. And I'm like, dude, where did you train last year? And so I go out to this place, and this dude's got like Adrian Wilson's in there jumping over 60-inch boxes.
Oh, the big safety.
Yeah,
I remember Adrian.
And I'm telling you, he's got guys from all over the country training, and it was one of those environments, man. You just like you walked in and you immediately like got goosebumps because you just started recognizing guys just grinding out, but they're all pros in there, man. That's so much fun.
I would have loved that.
It's so much. It's such a cool experience. Like even if you take that down to the high school level, like if you're in high school and you're training with your team and you can go find a gym or some facility that's got like dudes from other high schools training. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what level you're at. Like you want to go kind of see what everybody else is doing. And like,
Yep.
man, I'm going to top that. I can work harder than those guys. Like I can test myself against these different people because you
Yeah.
see the same thing every week. Like sometimes you get numb.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's a good environment. As they say, iron sharpens iron, pretty much, in that world.
The other
It's
the
a
other
good
big thing about this offseason, brother, is we got this Aaron Rodgers deal.
Yeah, that is.
And it appears we've kind of talked about all over, but it appears one would think that the draft is kind of
Keyword.
a soft deadline, right? Because
Right.
the sources are out now saying the Packers want a first round pick plus some other stuff,
Yes.
and the Jets aren't willing to do that. And so we're all assuming 2023 first round pick, 13th pick in the draft is what they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But that draft deadline, like what happens? It's like in a month, right? And so there's like the other suggestions out there are basically like, all right, the Jets should give up a second and then maybe a conditional third in 2024, depending on like if the Green Bay Packers go to the playoffs or not. Now you start looking at Brett's old deal, and Brett's old deal was a fourth, but it could go up to a second or a first if like they went deep into the playoffs. You see what I mean? So you can start, but it's all kind of pushed to the next season. Because like the Jets still need draft picks this year. It's not like the Jets are complete, like offensive line, for example. They need draft picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give up some of your talent. There's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of young players. We brought up Jackson last year, or the kid from Florida State, the defensive end, the first round pick last year. There's a kid that, hey, let's second round pick in that kid. You get Aaron Rodgers. Like to me, thank you very much, done deal, right? But once they hit AG, let's say they go to the draft and there's not a deal done. Who's got the leverage then? Like, what do you do now?
Ooh, man, who has the leverage then? I don't think it's a scenario that's gone down like this yet. I mean, probably I think back to like I remember was it Eli? He got drafted, but he didn't want to play for what was it? Chargers, and so that's how he got to the Giants, stuff like that.
His dad told him. His dad told him.
His dad was involved in that. So yeah, it just. Man, who would have? I don't know. I would say, I mean, obviously, it would be somewhere between the teams, either Packers or Jets. Obviously, Aaron wouldn't have none because he's under the control of the guidelines of his contract, basically, and he's basically got to still be a Packer, on top of that. So it's going to be interesting.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers, AG? He's got some sort of, I don't know if it's like official right of first refusal, but
right.
If Aaron Rodgers, if they say, hey, you're going to the Patriots, or let's pick a worse team. Let's say you're going to the Bucks.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I'm not. Like they're not. That deal's not getting done, right?
No, it's not. And he has that. Yeah, and he has.
So he has a little bit of cachet here.
A little bit. So he has a little bit of leverage too. So because he's using it already, to be in the situation he's in, saying he has he wants to play for the Jets, period. Let's get this deal done. I'm not, it's not my fault that we're not, the deal's not done. That's what he's been saying for the last 2 weeks since he made his announcement. So, so there's options out there for everybody. And so it's going to be interesting if that even gets that far. I mean, that's another 31 days from now. So that'll be interesting.
It sounds like they're not
crazy.
It sounds like they're not even. Alan Lazard came out and said, like, yeah, it's a big reason I came to the Jets. I can't wait. I'm sure I have no problem. I'm sure he's going to get here.
Right.
The Jets have the 13th pick. They now have the 42nd and the 43rd pick, so that's second round. They have a fourth round pick, 112, and they got a fifth round pick. They got picks, right? They got a 13th, but basically they got the 13th, and you got the 42nd, the 43rd. I think the Packers have like 45th, maybe 46, something like that. So you start looking at this and you go, okay, well, they're not like, I just can't imagine they're giving up the 13th pick. I can't imagine that they give up a player that's highly regarded, a young player, which I think just, sometimes you got to go, well, this guy's probably, maybe he was a first, he's worth a second now. Maybe he's a first, he's worth a first. I don't know. But you give up a player like that. Maybe you give up the 42nd or 43rd pick in a compensatory pick the next year. You feel like this deal has to get done. I just wonder on draft day, the Packers are sitting at 15th. Their cupboard is bare. They've brought in nobody. They have way too many needs to fill given what they have for draft capital. Do you think and they can trade for these players? Like, do you think something happens, or is it just, again, to me, the leverage goes back to the Jets now because you go, well, that ship's sailed. What are you going to do now?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they're going to do anything. I believe they're doing what they're doing, nothing. And the draft is not going to change anything. And only thing that happens will potentially happen is the Jets say, all right, we'll take this, from their point of view, just to get it done to make sure they get Aaron. But I don't see Robert Saleh. I mean, his GM, I don't know, but Robert Saleh is not that guy. He's not going to just let somebody see him sweat. He's not intimidated. He's going to, hold to his guard. He said, I think he made a comment, we're not in a hurry, to make this deal happen. So in that sentiment, as a Packer organization, it's like, or Gutekunst and them crew making their decision, it's like, man, he'll just let this thing draw out in terms of from Robert Saleh's comments and his point of view. He's like, I'm in no rush.
It seems like it's this. I don't think it's a Saleh. I don't even think it's a Joe Douglas deal. Like I think it's a Woody Johnson thing. Thinking like, what am I going to do with this fan base if we don't get Aaron?
True.
And maybe he blinks. But again, again, soft deadline. It doesn't to me. What are the Packers going to say? I guess we're not going to do a deal. Okay, well, what are you going to do now?
Yeah, they ain't got no quarterback. No quarterback that wants to play. Well, the guy that they want to play doesn't want to play. He will not play. And so you still got to go with Love. Mm-hmm. And whoever you pick up, if you pick up anybody other than who they have in as a backup right now. So that's what the whole hurry up and wait and see. Here's a
really stupid thing for me to even say, but like, what do the Jets do with Zach Wilson?
I mean, my goodness! I mean,
do they trade him? I mean,
I wouldn't.
You can't trade him. You can't trade him to Green Bay because he's probably more talented than Jordan Love, right? Like he's going to have these moments in practice. Yeah, he's going to have these moments in practice where guys are like, "Wait a second, this dude's unbelievable." You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just got to talk. Like you got to find out what's in his head, like what's going on in his head. Yeah. Because seeing him as a young player, he's acting like that off the field and even on the field. In press conference interview, when he made that comment that literally pissed every player off, even former players, about not caring about what the defense does or whatever he made a comment of. He has some learning. He's going through learning pains, basically growing pains, basically, and he's learning the hard way. Does he have the talent to do why he got drafted? Yes, he does, but his mental has to get right. I say any player like that with the abilities that he has, because we all seen him play decent and pretty good, but his mental has to get where it's a professional, where he has to understand from the things he says to how he prepares for a game. All that has to be a certain standard and put it out and do it every day. It has to be consistent and not just because he's a first round pick and he's doing all the other stuff off the field with, lifestyle and all that. That's where you got to fix that up first. And that's where, if I'm a player, if he comes to the Packers, I'm a veteran, but hey, bro, we got to get your ship cleaned up, because right now it's not. And if you're going to be a quarterback on this team, this is how quarterbacks from the past played. They played at a high level. They knew everything about the offense that they needed to know, and plus more. And then the talent would come out even better. So that's what for Zach, if he came for some crazy reason, he was part of this trade, that would be, he have to have that mindset coming in here to be successful.
So what's funny, man, is like I 100% agree with everything you just said, and I also 100% think that you and I are dinosaurs, and nobody would say that to him. You know what I mean? I just don't think that's how it is in this new reality. I think it'd be like, we're gonna bring him in, we're gonna love him, we're gonna, it's everything.
No,
and then they'll hold us. There's no hard like, hey man, sit down. We're gonna have a tough love discussion right now.
Exactly.
And then after that, it's all good. Like I just don't know if that happens anymore. I hope I want to believe it does, but I just don't know.
Me too. I want to believe it does. I say if Mercedes Lewis is back on the team, it's going to happen.
That's true.
Know that's going to 100% happen, but we don't know if he's going to be back. So you got to have leaders like that. Even if they're young, they're there. You just got to find them. Hopefully you have them. But there's players that I've met. I mean, we know one, KJ Osborne. He's that guy. These players out there that have the same mindset as us, that means they were either raised or trained, from a football standpoint, to have that type of mindset. Hey, man, you're only going to get what you get if you put the work in, basically. And when we see a young player say that, where you see very few far between right now, but when you see it, that's the guy that has to be upfront in terms of talking to when new players come into the locker room. If it's drafted or free agency, to say, hey, man, this is how we do things, here at this team. And if you got a problem with that, let's talk about it. How we going to fix that? I mean, I remember when Charles Woodson came in and between myself and Rob Davis sitting him. I know Rob Davis set him down like face to face. I would tease him on the field a little bit just about, where, because we were the same draft class, and I understood where he had come from being at Oakland. It wasn't quite the quality of team, and I say culture that we were at that time. And so I would tease Chuck, I would call him Chuck, Mom. He hated that. I forgot. But I would call, Charles, mess with him, because I was getting at him to make sure I knock off these layers to understand that, look, we're all the same here. We all got to put in work. We got to do certain things to help our unit work. I have to do this for a running back to make my offensive side work. You're going to have to do the same for the defense. That means if you got to do something you may not want to do, you got to commit to it and not complain about it and stuff like that. And I remember Rob Davis telling me he sat him down and had those conversations, in the years to come after that. And that's eventually where he led to himself to be the defensive player of the year.
I remember I was up there with Tauscher, I think, after like a game. And he just playing Detroit, and he picked off a pass and he scored an interception touchdown. And Tauscher told me something. I forgot exactly what he said, but he said something to the effect was, he's one of the few guys I've ever been around that he's so good you can't consider him arrogant. That's the best compliment I've ever heard. He's like, he's so good, he's not even arrogant. He's
and Tauscher's a smart guy, so yeah, that's
when he says when he says he's like the best, he's like he is. It's pretty simple. Like it's a pretty simple deal. All right, man. Let's do some get off my lawn today, because we got some
good ones here. I see it.
Okay, first one. Listen, your guy.
This is funny right here.
Your favorite player in the whole world, LeBron James.
No, MJ
comes back. Yeah, I know it's MJ. He comes back, and it's just not enough, right? Because they didn't win the game. They lost the game. So then it's like, how'd you come back? And blah blah blah. And he said, well, I was supposed to have surgeries, and I'm the fastest healer that said they've ever seen. And he called the LeBron James. He called the foot doctor, the LeBron James of feet. You got to be a special kind of arrogant to start comparing other professions by a standard that you have decided that you've set for your profession. That is awesome. Now, my son did say this today. He goes, I get what you're saying, but if Conor McGregor said that, you'd think it was hilarious. And I said, you know what, you're right. Because I feel like Conor's. I think fighters are doing a shtick. I think it's like Floyd Mayweather, Conor. I think they're constantly. It's like a shtick. I'm sure LeBron is like playing chess, but I'm thinking he's playing checkers. But I don't think I don't think what he does is a shtick. I think he's just like dead ass serious.
No, he's dead ass serious. I believe that. And also, we're in a culture now, the young generation that is the famous generation. I say the young of the famous of the young, or whatever, how to get it. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You go to any industry and have somebody at LeBron's age or down that is very successful at what they're doing. They're real easy to say certain things like greatest, like GOAT, the best, or giving themselves like, I love Lil Wayne. Back in 2007, when he was just getting started, he called himself the greatest rapper alive. And I'm like, no, man, you can't do that. Because the rule is you earn it from your peers.
Somebody else has to say it.
Somebody else has to say it. And so kids today, even some of the kids I'm experiencing here and starting to meet for the first time, and even kids back at my other university, they would say things. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't nickname yourself, or you can't say you're the best of all time. Like, you have to earn it. You got to do the work, and then you get crowned that by somebody else, not yourself.
It's not true.
Well, yes,
right? It's just exactly. If you saying it, that means it's not true. Somebody else got to say it for you.
100%.
And not your mama. Your mama can't say it for you.
Nope.
My son is the best.
And grandma. Nope, can't do it.
Okay, I got another one for you. So Mel Kiper's on, I think, mock draft 4 now.
I'm with you on this one.
And we got fans out there and they're mock drafts, and I get that it's like, I do understand that it's fun, but
right.
I don't understand. Like when you see, I remember I was watching something and they were taking the Northwestern kid, Skornovic,
yeah,
to Skronik, the left tackle. They were taking him to a team with an all-pro left tackle, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, why are we even watching this draft? Why is this a thing? And why? So I wish somebody would just tell me why fans go so nuts over these like different versions. And I guess it just gives you something to talk to about But I'm like, there's a lot of other cool things to talk about in the world than
100%.
than this stuff, man. Because like I feel like I could make one of these in 5 minutes and just put it out. I just keep putting it out there. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has become a thing because places like ESPN and NFL Network, CBS, and Fox have their talking heads to have more stuff to talk about. It gives them deliverables for the sponsors, that they're already sponsored by. So they could say, what's his name, Todd McShay, mock draft sponsored by Geico or whatever. That's for us. That's how I see it. I'm like, man, this is like, I don't know if you play a whole lot of it, but I play a little bit of fantasy football. It's basically like fantasy football. It's like, no, it's like, all right, I'm gonna put a little bit invested because I know the players, but after that, I'm not gonna have a breakdown if I don't start a guy where I should have started him or whatever. I'm just gonna be like, oh, I missed it. Oh well, move on. It's fantasy football. Just like this is a mock draft, which means also a fantasy mock draft.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, you're right. And it's while it's fun, like what is really fun is like for you, probably you and me, but I think for a lot of people, is to look at tape on a guy or have somebody who has an opinion on that person or a narrative and go through it and go, okay, this is why I feel, get information about people is fun.
Yeah,
and
that's same thing.
And whoever you want to get information from, if they want to, or they're trying to push a certain narrative, they're just trying to be as objective as possible. Like that's up to the fan, right? It's just like, it's a political thing. Like who cares? So that's great. I just don't get the rest of it, man. The rest, the whole, just every daily debate on like the new mock drafts. I'll never get it because I'm old.
Yeah, we're both old. Yeah.
Did you see this? This is right up your alley. So the next one. Okay, did you see the commercial?
I've been seeing the commercials. They're pretty funny. I like Ozzy.
I freaking loved it. So Ozzy Osbourne. I don't even know if it's from Meta or what, but he's going to be the new
PlayStation
VR,
2. Yeah, PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 VR. Their second VR.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yep.
I'm just going to say this, and you're in the gaming business.
Yes.
If Ozzy Osbourne ever shows up at a convention and he's like, we're going to put him on, we're just going to put a microphone in front of his face.
Oh, that's going to be beautiful.
And we're going to play whatever the latest, shoot 'em game is. I would pay good money. I would do terrible things to watch that and watch whatever comes out of his mouth. That dude is a living legend, and everything that comes out of his mouth is solid gold.
Yep.
And putting him in VR goggles, if his heart doesn't explode,
correct,
would be so great to watch.
You see Ozzy. I see him in the first couple of commercials. Now I'm looking at the one that's on YouTube, a bigger one now, a longer one, and it's like you just said. Is he going to just hilt her over? I want him to be okay and have a fun time doing the VR experience. But to have him, like you said, gold, you don't know. He's old. He's at the point of age, which will be one day where whatever I say come out of my mouth, you got to take it for what it is.
Yeah.
You can't stop me. I'm going to say what the hell I want to say. That's where he's at in terms of the age. And who is ever in the marketing meeting to say, hey, let's bring Ozzy Osbourne, Sharon, any other people that we feel and we know for a fact that they don't play video games, we're going to put them in our commercials, be in PlayStation, be in Xbox or EA Sports or whatever. I wish I was in that meeting because that's a great conversation.
And the thing is, like,
yeah, pay them a lot of money though.
Do you remember? I remember when they did the Osbourne show and it was on MTV.
Yep, I used to watch it.
Okay.
I was a fan.
It was incredible, right?
I was a fan. Yes.
Travis Barker did one. Travis, and he had this wacko gold digger wife. Travis Barker's the drummer from Blink-182.
Yeah,
he's got everything now. The guy's amazing, right?
Yeah.
He had one, and he was like the nicest dude, and she was just not.
Yeah.
And then the Osbournes had this show that was because Sharon was gold, as good as Ozzy was. Awesome. Sharon was probably as good, not better, right?
Yep.
The kids were amazing. Everything was amazing about it. But I don't know how these people I don't know how kids if I saw that. If I was like my son's age, I mean, my son don't know because I like Ozzy Osbourne, but how do the kids even know who the hell he is? And then you just look at it as it's just some old guy who talks funny when he's hilarious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He drops gems. He could say stuff, and you just kind of like, what did he say? You might, if you understand him, with his thick, still drunk accent. You don't know.
It's like constantly inebriated. He was constantly under some sort of chemical.
Yes, And well, he was a rocker. He was an old school, 60, started in the 60s, all through the 70s, early 80s. And now it's transitioned because of MTV into another generation of super fans.
So the story of Black Sabbath, if anybody wants to go watch documentaries, there's a documentary on Black Sabbath that you're just going like, I mean, you can't really.
I'll watch that.
You can't. You just
I like
can't,
docs.
You can't even believe that you go and he's still alive. Like there's no. It's just. No way,
yeah. I mean, that's anybody that's a rock star from that time. Any group, you be like, how are they still moving? Like, how are they still thinking, functioning, breathing? Because I just seeing stuff, reenactments, movies of other stuff like Spinal Tap, watching movies like that kind of.
That's amazing.
You see movies like that, and you're just like, oh my goodness, okay.
Did you see John Wick 4, by the way?
Not yet. I'm going to. I started to go last night. But I was a little tired, so I was
it's amazing. I won't. We'll talk about it next week. It's amazing though. I got one more for you, and this is kind of an interesting conversation. I think that's going to happen the next couple of years. So, in my opinion, the transfer portal, NIL.
Yeah.
You look at the men's Final Four. I don't follow women's basketball. I apologize for viewers who do. I just don't know who's playing. I just know the Iowa girl dropped 40 last night. The Iowa woman dropped 40 last night. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Final Four men's basketball, Florida Atlantic, first timers. San Diego State, first timers.
Mm-hmm.
Miami. UConn's the only, I guess you would call blue blood program. They're a 4th seed. Okay. This is, for me, this sounds like a complete result of transfer portal. Like San Diego State, all their kids are transfer portal kids.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it until I read this. And I'm like, you know what? That's right. I just realizing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you go and you remember very specifically, probably we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
The kid who wanted
the Miami
X amount of the Miami kid who wanted X amount of dollars. The Miami guy was like, no, go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But it was a thing, and now they're in the Final Four, and it just makes me It's weird, man, because that shows you a couple things. One, what it really shows me is like the talent level is all of a sudden the bandwidth and talent has gone it's way tighter than it used to be in basketball.
Yeah.
Because all these kids are leaving so early. They're getting the 1 year, the best kids are one and done.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this is absolutely bananas that you can have that many lower seed teams or not blue blood teams because when I look at college football, because my immediate thing was like, oh, I wonder if this is going to happen to college football.
Right.
And I'm sitting here and thinking about it right now as we say it, it's almost the opposite, right? Where we kind of think that NIL transfer portal is going to consolidate all the best players on Alabama, Georgia. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think this could happen? Do you think we could actually, let's just call this flattening the curve in college football because of it makes sense. Transfer portal, NIL. You're at Nebraska now. Like, do you see anything like that suggests this might be the change coming?
I say a little change. I say for teams like Alabama, I think they could still stay above water because of the talent they have, regardless of who takes, what player goes to, what other university to play and start. So I think right now they have the talent. They're going to still stay above water in terms of winning games. But when I got here on campus about 2 months ago now, I, went and did some research on, we have 5 collectives, that's what they're called around the nation, collectives. So it's and you know what they are. It's the booster groups that created, a legal name and now basically has a bank account to throw money at players. And I'm looking through these collectives and I'm looking at players from like small schools, in Texas, just small schools, they got 6-figure NIL deals. I saw one old lineman, he had a $600,000 NIL deal. And I'm like, what? I'm like, wow. I'm like, he's if he does right, be smart with his money, he's good. He can put that away right now and being 19, 21 years old, anywhere in that age was like, I'm just seeing there looking at the levels of NILs they're getting. And I just, of course, devil's advocate, I'm like, man, if I was out right now, what would I be getting as an all-American, all-state, coming to my school, my state university school, NIL? It might be $1 million, if not more. I'm like, this is crazy.
I told Maddox this
Crazy.
morning, we're training this morning, and I said, look, man, this NIL deal this NIL thing, because soccer players aren't like soccer players don't traditionally from other countries. They don't go to university. They don't go to college.
Right. They go straight to the training ground clubs, right?
Yeah,
Like at the lower level.
They go from their academy to the pro team.
Exactly. The academy. That's what it is.
They don't have that. They don't have that middleman.
Right.
So the U.S. is still trying to push college soccer. So the women's side's a little bit easier, although there's a lot of I know.
Right.
Listen to this. I know a 15-year-old that just signed a pro contract, which is insane.
For the women, for the ladies?
Barcenas family, congratulations, unbelievable. San Diego
Gotcha.
Waves.
Right.
So, but they're doing it a little more. But traditionally, U.S. kids go through the college system. I saw Maddox. I go, dude, in 10 years from now, all of the NIL kids that are any good are going to be making more than a lot of guys are making in the league.
True.
Like in these different sports, and certainly more than like our generation made, at least on your first contract. I mean, it's not even close.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's going to be that. I mean, I think some kids are already probably doing that. I mean, make it.
No, I'm just talking about, you look about across the swath of the entire country, though. There's a handful. The quarterback for Texas was making $1 million when he was still in high school, right? That's why I had to leave. So,
Gotcha.
so like the two girls from Oregon are making. They just did like an NIL ranking. There's a player maybe from UConn that is like the highest paid guys making over $1 million. Then the two girls from Oregon, they're twins. I think they were in the tournament. They're making $800,000 plus each off of NIL money because they do a bunch of stuff together. So it's not just like it's expanding from men's football to men's basketball. Women's basketball is that's $800,000, no joke now.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a girl. She's an LSU gymnast. I think she's like the highest paid. She might be the highest paid college athlete now with NIL money because she's got like 4 gazillion followers on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
So it's not just college football. And
it's all sports. Yeah.
It makes you wonder, bro, like I hope that it's an incentive for kids to stay in college longer, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And
I mean, about it,
yeah, when you think about it, they do it right. Get your degree. You have extra, basically you have yourself in a security set point where you have that degree, you could get a job anywhere. You stay healthy, you get drafted in your sport, or you go to your Olympic sport and go pro overseas, but you still have that nest egg from your college years now that players can now play with more secure, they play more confident because they know they don't have to basically go out here and try to win the big game right now. I mean, they'll have that little security now, but they don't have to know that if they don't, there's nothing else for them because that's how it was for us.
Yeah, but see that, so that's the thing. Here's the counter to that argument. The other side of the coin is, how can you be hungry if the table's always full?
True. No.
Right.
I agree with that. So for the ones like that, those are the ones that they're going to tell out because they're not going to understand when they're not getting that money and when it stops if they don't go pro and they're still trying to live in the state, live in the same town as their university. And because even former players do it. If you live in the area, you could still get a deal. That's happening with myself right now. So, but for those players that don't have that education or that mom, dad, or brother, sister, or whatever, uncle, coach that puts that in their head, say, look, kid, yeah, you're playing good now, but this could all end because of an injury or you do something dumb off the field or anything like that. Then all it could be taken away. So just be mindful and gotta get that education. So that's where I know some universities are actually doing between financial literacy and then teaching them the better way. Like this, yeah, you got this money, but still have that hunger to get better and at your sport, at your craft, and what you're an expert as you're learning here at whatever university you're at, basically.
Easy to say, tough to do, certainly, right? And,
exactly.
And I wonder. So I would just take it this way and go. At what age is too young to give these kids money? That's the real question, right? Like, because now who's to say
middle school, elementary, right?
Yeah. Okay. Sophomore year in high school, you have an option. You can go pro or you can You can look down the barrel of I'm going to go to a tier 1 school and I'm going to get paid a lot of money. I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm 15. Like what do I do? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's like, because you're almost, and this is a very rare situation. I'm not saying a lot of kids aren't going to experience this, but you can see how this is going to go into, if it's already happened at the freshman level in college, then it's definitely going to be talked about at the junior and senior level in high school.
Yeah.
And so now we're making these decisions. It's just, man, there's so much to unpack, bro.
It is. I mean, it's already being talked about for the middle school, elementary school level. I've talked to a group that reached out to me through an email about 3 months ago about developing this for kids like 12 and 11 and 10. They reached out to me to be like one of the coaches or something. And I was like, what is this? And I'm like, they said it had, in some of the readings, basically like how these players can get paid. And I'm like, we're talking about 8 to 12. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so, yeah, so it's already being talked about in the South. I know this group was out of Florida, so there are already groups talking about it. So
we just exploit. We exploit, and we justify, don't we?
Yeah,
I mean, we really do. It's a $20 billion youth sports is a $20 billion industry annually in the United States of America. That's bigger than the NFL. The youth sports industry is bigger than the National Football League.
Yeah.
Right.
And and I just saw something. I was on Instagram this weekend, and I saw a video of Kobe talking about AAU teams, basketball teams, exactly. And he said they're trash because of this. He said they just play a lot of games. They don't develop talent. They make the kids basically try to win at all costs mentality without developing their skills and their drive, their ability, and the weaknesses that they do have, because all players are not great players. But they're not getting developed by none of the coaches. None of the programs are doing that to help them. And I agree with that. I have a nephew now, great nephew actually, and he got a full ride to University of Chicago Loyola. And he is at home right now. He decided to drop out because he was an AAU kid. And I'm not saying it's not hold directly to that, but potentially it may be because he was traveling just as much as we were traveling. I mean, baseball,
as a high school kid.
Exactly. And that was before he was in high school. He was doing this in 8th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So he had been doing it 5-6 years prior to him where it was going to be required, in high school and in college. And now he got to a point where he's out of state, and still, because you're still growing, he's 18, 19. Now he doesn't have that home support as he had with family around him, that then he's going to high school, he's coming home and then going back to the high school. But now you're at a college away from everybody a lot of people you don't have in your life anymore. And then that's where a lot of athletes, as we know, we had friends that did this, that they're not home anymore. This is like, man, this is unknown territory. I didn't think, being in the Navy is going to be like this. Or I didn't think it's being in Lincoln, Nebraska it's going to be like this. I want to go home, basically, mentality. So it's they
don't have the tool set.
They don't have the tool set, and they cripple.
They don't know how to cope. That's why I started this process to perform. And that's why I started the company. I mean, that was literally it. I just saw kids. I saw kids going into the pros. Yeah, and they get there and they don't have any help. And they're like, man, they didn't know how to help them. They didn't know how to solve their own problems. They don't even have a process.
And that's what our generation has that. Like, I mean, between our parents, between coaches and teachers, the mentality, and then watching the guys that got us excited, like watching the pros playing. When we see them do a post-game interview, or win the championship, you saw where the excitement was coming from. It was a team thing. They were, patting each other on the back and giving us each other high five. It wasn't just them on TikTok doing something.
Now everybody pulled their phone out to capture the moment.
Doing something individual. It's like, no, live in the present. You did this. You didn't do this by yourself.
Right.
You didn't win this championship by yourself. Don't think you did, but everybody else is going to tell you that's outside that little circle of your teammates to be like, oh yeah, you did that. You did no. And it's like, and we knew better. My two brothers nailed it in my head by the age of 6, knowing that I was wanted to be a running back. They said, you are nothing without your offensive lineman. Remember that now. And if you don't, we're gonna beat you up until you do, and that's what they did. So by the time I got to Green Bay, I already knew who was bread in my butter, or butter in my bread. Basically, it was you guys up front, and I'll never forget that.
And we love butter and we love bread. That's for damn sure. AG,
yes, you do.
good show, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
Man, find me on Instagram and AG30 and Twitter, AG30, all one word. And my Gamers Lounge, Amon Green's Gamers Lounge on TikTok, airing every Wednesday at 11 a.m. If not, jump on my social. Just make sure if I change the date, because sometimes it does do that. So, Mike, let everybody know where they can find you.
MikeWall68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. You can check this show out on our Process to Perform channel over on YouTube. Thank you to our sponsors again, BetOnline.ag. Check them out if you want to bet on the upcoming Final Four games. And all right, my man, have a good week. Everyone out there, Packers fans, thanks for listening.